Hello my bookish friends, welcome back to the channel. It is so good to see you again. Today we are doing some book spreads for the things I read in the month of June, and some of these are my Pride reads. If you want to see what I read, stay tuned. Welcome back my bookish friends. It is so good to see you all. I hope you are doing well. This month I've read a few things. First thing I finished off was Confessions of an Ugly Stepsister. This is not one of my Pride reads, but it was something I started last month and finished this month. This is the story of Iris, an ugly stepsister, the plain youngest sister of three. The older sister, Ruth, has some challenges and she's sort of tasked with care of this sister. And then there's the beautiful stepsister, Clara. This is, as you can imagine, sort of a Cinderella retelling, kind of like Wicked was telling the story from, quote, the villain's perspective. This is kind of the same thing. We're now getting a Cinderella from the perspective of the ugly stepsister. The family has to flee and end up moving after their father's death. Iris is kind of contemplating the value of beauty or ugliness and trying to take care of her sisters and trying to figure out how the world really works. And she ends up becoming an apprentice to the master, who is a painter. He's also got an apprentice, Casper. She spends a lot of time with these people and starts to pick up a painter's eye and gain a great appreciation for art. There is a ball, but in this version, the stepmother wants Clara, the beautiful stepdaughter, to capture the attention of the prince and to marry. The portrait was being painted specifically to capture a wealthy suitor for her in the hopes that the family would raise their status and their financial situation. I try not to give away spoilers and tell you how it all ends and how it all ends up, and mostly just give you an idea of the story. So that's kind of the hook. I really love Gregory Maguire's work. He's a really great writer. His take on things is very unique. He has a really strong narrative voice, and just from the time I start reading anything by him, I am hooked, I am captured, and I am page turning over and over, like sleepless nights kind of reading. This is no different. It's a really, really great story. If you like a fairy tale turned on its head and told from a different perspective, you're gonna love this as well. It's a really great retelling. I strongly recommend it. The next book I read this month was Carnival Row, Tangled in the Dark. This was the story of Tuolamine LaRue. If you've seen the Prime streaming show, this is the fairy friend of the main character. This story is mostly told from her perspective. She is a well-to-do, very talented writer and aspiring poet. She's got a life of promise and a history of privilege behind her. She goes to all the best parties, knows all the right people, and everyone expects that she's going to be the end-all be-all in poetry in this academic environment. She's on track to do just that when Vanette just literally stumbles into her dorm, and they now have to become roommates. They could not be more different, where Tuolamine is luxury incarnate, Vanette is from the sticks, right off the farm, and crass, nothing but rough edges. The two of them become friends, best friends, very close, and they have all these great experiences while that's building, and then there becomes a romantic edge to it. This is so beautifully played. Just the way you have these almost enemies to lovers because they just are so at odds, but they come to understand and appreciate each other. And it's such a beautiful romance. I I loved it. Now, I did the audiobook of this as opposed to, I don't know if there actually is a physical copy of it. I found it on Audible, and it was one of the first, I think it was the second audiobook I've listened to, and the narrator was sublime. She did such a great job of all the different voices for different characters, and it just put me in the head of these characters and really demonstrated the distinct differences between them. And it was beautiful. The things one will sacrifice for a friend, the things we refuse to give up for love. Really a great, great story. If you are interested in fantasy and fairies and academia and the brink of war, check out the book. It's so, so good. Loved it. Then I read House in the Cerulean Sea. This is a queer fantasy written by T.J. Klune, and this is another fantastic fantasy. I think most of the books that I read are fantasy. Let's just throw that out there. Our main character is Linus, who is a caseworker for the department in charge of magical youth, and when we meet him, he is on job doing an interview for a kid who acted out and his powers lashed out at school and someone got hurt. His job is to assess whether or not these kids are a danger to themselves or to others. He's supposed to stay detached, he's supposed to stay uninvolved and make decisions. And he doesn't understand why he goes into these things that is often thought of as the villain, because not everybody does what's best for the kid or for the program. They're just like, too dangerous, and they shut places down, and then these kids have nowhere to go, or worse. And so this is where we meet him, seeing him in his element, being completely objective and distant and not letting himself get emotionally attached to anyone. He then gets called up, when he goes back to the office, he then gets called up to talk to the uppity-ups, and they give him a new assignment. He immediately is handed a case of files and not to touch them. Then the next day he has to get on a train, and while he's going off to the middle of nowhere, he starts reading up on some of the kids he's going to be meeting, and they're a special bunch. So he ends up on an island in the middle of the Cerulean Sea, this very disjointed house with a wonderful collection of misfits. And he desperately tries to keep his objectivity, stay separate from them, just observe and don't participate, because that's his job. But he's got a heart, he's a good man, and he cannot help the fact that these kids weasel their way into his heart. This household, this family of extremely dangerous creatures are just the sweetest kids who have just been completely screwed over by the world up until this point. He does the best he can. It is a romance between him and the man who runs this, I guess, orphanage, and kind of between him and these kids too. Not a romance between them, but it's absolutely a love letter to him just realizing who he is and who he isn't. It's a story of found family, it's a story of romance, and it's a story of, kind of breaking the rules and stepping out of the system to stand by what you know is right. I loved this story so, so much. Passed it on to my daughter when I'm done. I hope she reads it because I think she will love it. Really great story. So those are two of my Pride picks for this month. I hope you enjoyed this video. I'm trying to make them shorter because my views have gone down. Love you guys so much. Thank you for watching. Drop down in the comments below. Let me know what you're reading. If you've read any of these books, what did you think about them? And what do you have left on your to be read shelf? Tell me all the tea down in the comments below. I cannot wait to gab with you about them. Happy Pride, everybody, and we'll see you next time. Give this video a like if you enjoyed the content. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. Check me out on TikTok if you want a daily dose of ink and paper. Down in the description box below, you'll find the TikTok for Book and Broom. Also, you'll find my author talk for the series I'm writing. I'm starting to do promotional TikToks and give you some details on that project. So if you're interested in either of those, my links to TikTok are in the description box below. You can also check me out on Instagram, on Pinterest, Patreon if you want to support the channel. And until next time, my lovelies, happy reading. Bye, guys.